on end, now potentially an unconventional trade. You mentioned you think it could be a safety. It'll be interesting to see what Howie Roseman does. Question for you, John, on AJ here as we get closer to the draft.
Oh, no. All right, go ahead.
Do you think that the Eagles or the Patriots have more leverage when it comes to that trade? Especially after this week where for the first time in AJ Brown's career, he did not go to involuntary workouts.
Yeah, I think the Eagles have a little bit less because it's so evident that, and again, I'm past all the fan stuff and all that. I mean, it's evident around the league what's going on. That's why I have these reports, and I've talked about it for weeks and weeks and weeks. His agent's out in Indianapolis shopping. He's looking for, new places. Where would he go? Where wouldn't he go? It's been going on for a long time. So everybody's aware. And then there's the second aspect of the health. And, you can say, teams are going to play that up. And yeah, they probably do a little bit. But hey, that's what you're dealing with. And that's really dated back to when he came out of Ole Miss long ago. So there's concern over his knee. How long can he go at the level that he's going? So I do think, and one of the weird, and I remember talking about with the Waddle stuff. Look, Waddle has nothing to do with AJ Brown. And I get it from a fan perspective. Well, AJ's better than Waddle, so they should get this. It doesn't work like that, man. It does not work like there's so many other things. And in this case, the biggest thing is that knee. And that impacts, and I'm with you. He's much better than Jalen Waddle. But that doesn't mean he's going to get as much. And ultimately, I still think Howie's getting a first-round pick. But I said he's got to go out in the future to do it. And by the way, that's not a bad thing. Because if things shake out the way people think they're going to shake out, the Patriots pick will be better in 2027, probably better in 2028 if you have to go out that far anyway, in a better draft, in a better populated draft. Now that, that can change on a dime. I don't know, around the league, and I probably haven't talked about this as much as I should have because I've been busy the past week or so, but this is sort of like the NIL draft where they're feeling the impact of NIL. Not only when you think about top guys staying, like Trinidad Chambliss, which we always talk about because he sued the NCAA to come back because he can make more money at Ole Miss than he can make in the NFL. And he sued the NCAA and he won. Well, at least he's won to now. It's still ongoing, but he got to stay, and that stay will last throughout the college season. So guess what? He can play and make that money. So he essentially won for all intents and purposes. But also, I was texting with an executive, former executive, and he said, there's fifth round picks that can make more money in college at high level college, not a ton, but high level college programs than they can make in the NFL. And they can stay for an extra year and build up their draft status. And the name he gave was Mesidor, who was evidently considered maybe a day 3 pick before he came back to Miami. And now he's a potential first round pick. So, it works on both ends for them. So you have this lack of depth. You have the lack of talent up top, the lack of depth down the bottom. As Ian Cummings said, a bell curve, essentially. And the theory is next year's draft is going to be much better. Now, the NIL part isn't stopping unless somebody gets a hold of it, and somebody in Congress, this probably has to be governmental, to be honest, put some restrictions.
Oh, great. That means it'll turn out well.
Well, yeah. But until something happens, this is not going away.
Yeah, you're right.
I can't believe after I read what I read about Ty Simpson, I cannot believe he went into the draft because Miami evidently offered him $6.5 million to go play for them.
Yeah.
I can't believe he went into the draft.
Yeah, Celia was telling me the same thing. He was talking to somebody at Miami who clued him in on that.
So it's like a big thing and its impact in the NFL to the point where,
it's funny, John. Now that you say all this, sorry to cut you off, but it almost surprises me that the NFL didn't step in previously when it comes to the legislation of college football.
well, they're very reactive. It's a very reactive league. I've talked about
Yeah.
that for years. It's
Yeah,
not
sure have.
proactive. It's not proactive at all. And ultimately, they have no power. Again, they moan and complain. I always talk about, well, they're not teaching quarterbacks the right way, which I agree with 1,000%. I agree with that 1,000%. If the goal is to become NFL quarterbacks, that's not their goal. Their goal is to win or they're going to get fired. Their goal isn't to develop players for you. You are not a formal developmental league. The college football is not a developmental league for the NFL. It ends up that way naturally, holistically, but it's not. So you can't just moan and complain about, well, they're not teaching the guys the right way. They're trying to win to keep their jobs. Because the same thing in the high-level colleges, maybe even worse than the NFL. If you go down, you went to Alabama, it might be worse there with some of these high-level as far as the impatience with not only head coaches but assistant coaches and things like that. And how much turnover they had at Alabama when Jalen Hurts was there. Think about that. And that's still with Nick Saban. So their job is not to develop players for the NFL. Their job is to go out and figure out how to I use Vandy as the perfect example of how do you turn that shit stain of a program around?
Right.
Well, Clark Lee did, man.
Yeah, he did. Did a really good job.
Yeah. They're beating everybody. Now we'll see if they can sustain it without the quarterback, but who also, by the way, stayed in as long as humanly possible because he's 5'11" and he can make a crap load of money in college, and he's lucky if he makes an NFL team. It's weird. It's upside down. If you're a Netflix Stranger Things fan, it's the upside down. It's like you got guys who can't play in the NFL making millions of dollars. Like Diego Pavia, I love the kid.
I know you've been saying that for quite a bit.
But he can't play in the NFL. And he's getting paid more than almost, unless you're picked in the first round. He in college, last year he got paid more than every single quarterback on a rookie contract.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's like, you could be the best in because college football is still a massive league generating a ton of money. So it makes sense to some extent. It's like John, the top star in wrestling terms, the top star in AEW might not be the top star in WWE, but
that's a great.
He'll take the biggest payday, in AEW and be fine with that,
That is actually a great comp. Well done, because I mean, one generates about 10 times the money the other one does, but Tony Khan's got a lot of personal heft behind him with his father, so he can afford to pay. In fact, the WWE is very angry because they changed the whole scheme of the pay rate, and those guys are underpaid drastically.
Wrestlers in general or WWE?
Oh yeah, compared to athletes, regular NFL, NBA, everything's about a 50-50 split, a little bit more in baseball. Everything's 50-50-ish to, between the owners and the players. Because WWE is getting sued because of when they were sold by the stockholders.
Right.
Vince kind of manipulated that. So you're getting this information through court filings. They pay about 18% of their revenue to talent versus 50, 55 which is major sports, 18% of their revenue to
Geez,
talent.
to me, it seems like it should be somewhere in between the two. 55 seems heavy for for operating cost, and 18 seems really low.